So hello, my name is Grace Duxbury. I'm with the Charles Lindbergh House and Museum here for our Snapshot Saturday series. Today I am joined with Pete Click of the Christie House, and we'll be discussing the Lindbergh-Christie connection. So Pete, if you want to do a little introduction and take it away.
Okay, thank you. My name is Peter Click. I'm from the Christie House Museum in Long Prairie, Minnesota. And we're kind of connected with the Lindberghs because one of the Christie boys married Eva Lindbergh, who was Charles's half-sister. So our house was built in 1901 by Dr. George Christie, who came to Long Prairie, Minnesota at the encouragement of Dr. Dr. Lewis of Sauk Center, who was Sinclair Lewis's father. So we have connections to the Lewises and to the Lindberghs through our house. But Dr. Lewis was in Sauk Center, and he told Dr. Christie, well, maybe you should come to Long Prairie because there's no doctor in Long Prairie. And Dr. George Christie came from Wisconsin to Long Prairie and decided he liked it there and that he would doctor there. So he was the first doctor in Dodd County, Minnesota, and he was a horse and buggy doctor. And back in those days, that's how they got around. And he built the Christie House Museum, which is a museum now, but the Christie House was built in 1901 for $5,000. And it was, the carpenters back there made 10 cents an hour. So, you know, $5,000 went a long way back then. Nowadays it doesn't go very far, but it's quite a unique house. It's in the Victorian style. It's 3 stories, and has the wood in the house was milled from local wood by the Shoemaker Mill, which was located in Long Prairie. So the house has a lot of antiques in it. In fact, the Minnesota Historical Society that came and visited it said it's the most complete house in the state because the Christies never threw anything away. They were quite frugal. And if they replaced anything, they took what they had and put it out in the carriage house, which wasn't in any use anymore. And when the house was given to us by the Christie family to the city of Long Prairie, they were able to recover everything but 3 items in the house. And that was the old ice box, the wood stove, and the toilet upstairs. So in 1901, when the house was built, there was no running water in Long Prairie. The water in Long Prairie, they didn't have it. They just had wells and cisterns and stuff. So, but the architect, who was from Bertram, Minnesota, knew that eventually there'd be water. So the house was built with the water pipes in it, and a flush toilet and a bathtub and everything on the second floor, even though there was no water there. So in order to use the tub, they had to carry the water up to the second floor to use it until 1906 when water and sewer came to Long Prairie. So the house is, there's a lot of stained glass here. Oh, this is the house in Long Prairie originally, and there's a few things that the crown on the roof and the railings around the porch are not there anymore, but we're hoping to get those back in so the house can be all original. There's a lot of stained glass in the house, and I guess we can show some pictures of that. The cameras can, but this is the stained glass coming from the upstairs to the downstairs, and the Christies put this glass in with the colors because it's supposed to represent the colors of the earth. So that every morning they felt that when you walk downstairs after being up, you get to see how beautiful the earth is and you can appreciate what you have on the earth. So they were quite forward thinking in some of the, a lot of the things they did. They also have, there's a lot of stained glass in the rooms. This is some in one of the rooms here. And this is in the living room here. This one here is the only east-facing stained glass. And the architect put that in because when they had special dinners for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the sun was in the southeast or the southwest when it was sitting at dinner time, the lights, it would light up, and if you go to the house in the fall, the window just lights up. It's so beautiful. And we have, the table is set with Susan Christie, who was one of the daughters of Charles and Eva, or granddaughters. They gave us the original china back, and it's 23 karat gold plated china, and it's just beautiful, and it sits on the table, and when you go in there in the afternoon and get to see it, it's just really something special. So they also have, in the doctor's office, is this, it's kind of hard to see because it's smaller, but this represents the things that were important to the Christies: music, literature, and medical. And so he had this in his office. And the house, in the house, the dining room or kitchen table. The kitchen table was still original, and until 1917, Dr. Christie did surgeries on that table. So then they have lunch, which is kind of, it's like, okay, let's see, what were you doing here an hour ago?
I suppose they scrubbed it down really good.
But hopefully they did. So, but it was pretty unique in what they did. Here's a picture of one of the bedrooms in the Christie house, and this is when Eva would come to visit. This is the bedroom she slept in, and they had books. They had a book for guests, and here's something that she wrote. And this morning we were all trying to figure out what she wrote, and none of us could figure it all out. But it's signed Eva Lindbergh, which was Charles' half-sister. So this would have been Charles, to be his half-sister, his father's first wife. She died. That was one of their children. They had 3 daughters, and then in the second marriage, they had Charles. So that's kind of the history. Our house, it's all original. We do tours by appointment. If anybody wants to come and see the house, they can go online to the ChristieHouse.org or else to the Christie House Museum and Google it. It pops up, and you can go online, and then it tells you who to call. And we have an excellent tour guide that I'm kind of learning from her, but Rita she knows all the history of the house and does a really good job. So the carriage house which is still in there. The boards on the floor were turned upside down because the horses beat it up so bad. But otherwise, it's an interpretive center, and things in the carriage house are like old fire extinguishers. And this board here with the Christie Lindbergh connection, which here's Charles and Eva over here. And then they got Charles with Eva and the Spaeths, that was Eva's second husband, on the 50th anniversary of this transatlantic flight. And here's pictures of George West Christie. We were talking this morning, there's so many George Christies that we kind of get them confused, but he was married to Eva, and they lived in Red Lake Falls, and they had a newspaper. And then he died in 1956, and Eva ran the paper with their son, who was also George Christie, and for 20 years, and they kind of kept it together and kept it going, and then their son kept it going until, in fact, it's still going, but in 2021, he died at 99 years old. So the other pictures we have here are just Christie family pictures and here's George, that was their son, that ran the newspaper. And more just pictures of the Christies with Eva or that. So I guess since I knew we were coming here, I've been learning a lot of things about the Christie Lindbergh connection, more than I thought. And this morning I had the privilege of talking to Susan Christie. Well, she was Susan Christie. But anyway, she was telling me some stories and about different things they had that were Christie Lindbergh connected in that. And I asked her, I said, so tell me how George and Eva got together. Because back in those days, Little Falls and Long Prairie is 24 miles apart. This isn't just like it was your neighbor that you got to know. So she told me that she said that when her father was running for Congress, he wanted to go to Long Prairie and give a speech. And James G. Hill, the London Railroad, lumber baron, he was everything, was here, and he drove him to Long Prairie for his speech, where he gave it to Parker someplace, and that Eva wanted to go with. So they took Eva along, and I guess while he was giving the speech, Eva was feeding James Hill's horses little sugar cubes, because, we give them apples. Horses, that was always a big thing when I was a kid, to bring a little sugar to the horses, or apples, or whatever. And so anyway, and George West asked somebody, who's the cute girl feeding sugar cubes to the horses? And she said, oh, that's Charles's daughter, Eva. And so anyway, he said, well, I'd like to meet her. So the guy introduced her, and they talked, and they said, well, let's exchange letters. So they exchanged letters for quite a few years. And then while they were in college, they got together more, and they decided they should get married, and they got married. So, and so they were married in 1955, or 56 is when he died. And then she continued in Redwood Falls for quite a while. So it's one of the fun things that we learned through all this about the Christie history. But George Christie, when he came to Long Prairie, and he was single, and he married, and him and his wife had 4 children, and they had George West, and they had Robert, who was a doctor in Long Prairie, Dr. Bob, and he lived in the house until he died. So the house, there's only been one family to ever live in the Christie house, and that was the Christies. And then there was Edith, who is kind of funny, because as we were looking up this stuff, Edith died as a young child of periodontitis. And so we were looking up the Lindberghs, and the Lindberghs had a daughter named Edith, who died as a young child. So the similarities in the families are really quite unique. And even, Dr. George Christie's wife died, and he married another woman. And Charles August Christie, Charles's dad, his wife died, and he married another woman. So it's the things that we've been finding out with this invitation we got to come over here is pretty unique, because I learned a lot of things about not only the Lindberghs, but about the Christies, who I kind of got thrown into the job of president, but I think I got put into it because my mother was very good friends with the whole Christie family. And the Christies didn't know what to do with the house, and they asked my mother, okay, what should we do with this house? And she said, why don't you donate it to the city as a museum? So we're very fortunate that they donated it to the city as a museum, because it's really a special place. And when people come to visit it, and even local people that come, it's like, I've been driving by this house for 20 years. I never knew this was what it was. This place is really decent. This is really cool. And the George West's son, which is this George, he had a large decoy collection too, and he gave the decoy collection. So this is kind of a thing in the house that would interest hunters, because we have an antique decoy collection there, and supposedly it's one of the largest ones there is. And these are all handmade decoys that go down, in the early 1900s, when they were doing all the market hunting and everything. So we have that in the house. We have the first surgical table they used. And, like I said earlier, they used the kitchen table until 1917, but then Dr. George Christie opened a hospital in Long Prairie, so then they were able to start doing things there. So the house it's fun to visit. It's a beautiful place, and we're doing what we can to keep it up. And it belongs to the city of Long Prairie. And when the Christies gave it to us, to the city, it was under the stipulation that it's maintained as a museum, independent from the city. And so that's what we do. We keep the house funded from donations and tours and whatever we can do. And we have a paranormal tour coming up next weekend on the 19th at 7 o'clock. and that's like our biggest fundraiser. And we have Heidi Steffens from the Minnesota Paranormal Society coming, and she's been there for a couple of years, and we have an evening event. Last year we did a seance, and it was a lot of fun. We did a dress to impress, and so everybody dressed in like the 20s and early 30s stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And this year here we're doing just to get together and see what happens in the house. A lot of things happen, different things that people say. In fact, one of the experiences I had is we had a paranormal group filming there for podcasts they do, or the Paranormal Network or whatever. And I was in the house with them and another person he sees the spirits. I don't see them, but where I usually don't see them. But anyway, we were in the house, and they were doing some testing and studying and filming and everything, and we were going to go from the parlor room to a different room. And I asked the guy next to me that sees the ghosts, and I said, "Do you see anything in here unusual?" "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, them spirits or ghosts, whatever you see, He says, "Well, yeah, I saw a guy that looked like Dr. George Christie get up from the table. He walked in front of you and I and went upstairs." And I said, "Well, what was he wearing?" He said, "Why are you asking that?" And I said, "I just want to know." He said, "Well, he had black pants on and a black vest, white shirt rolled up with a bow tie." He says, "Why are you asking this?" I said, "Because I saw that guy and I never see any of these people." So I said, for me to see one is pretty unusual, but we have people that come to the house and they tell us that, "Oh yeah, Mrs. Christie's sitting in that chair," or Edith, and we've had several people tell us that Edith is always around the house. So now it's kind of funny because when we go in the house, we always say hello to Edith.
You gotta make nice of them.
Yeah, so hopefully she'll stay part of our establishment. And but it's pretty special. It's a lot of good things happen, and we have everybody's friendly. We don't have anything not going on, and we have a Victrola phonograph in the house that we still have the original crate and the insurance paper, and it still looks like brand new. And sometimes when you play the records, a lot of things happen in the room because Mrs. Christie entertained in the room. And apparently they rolled the carpets up and had dances in there sometimes. So it's kind of fun with some of the paranormal stuff that happens in the house.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Otherwise, if there's any other last things you wanted to get out, anything else you want to plug? Or?
What else do we have? Oh, I got notes here. I should go get my glasses on and go through the notes because make sure we have it. We had it all. We hit the bull. Well, here's something I didn't cover. George West Christie married Eva Lindbergh on June 14, 1916 in Little Falls. And they had one son and one daughter. And they lived in Red Lake Falls and ran the newspaper up there. Let's see. Here, yeah, Charles visited, this is something I found out, that Charles had visited Red Lake Falls. And I heard that the original story I heard was that he visited it in the spirit of St. Louis when he was flying all over. But now I found out that he wasn't the spirit of St. Louis, it was the Ford Tri-Modal, that we didn't really know if his wife was with him or not. But and I had talked to Susan Christie, and she said, I don't remember if she was or not, but she said that he visited, and then what he did was he took this George and George's son up for a flight in the plane. Well, George's son, who was also George, was 10 years old at the time. And that's where he got his love for flying. So he became a pilot, and he was a pilot in World War II, but he never didn't go to war. He trained pilots, and he was on the USS Wolverine in the Great Lakes. And one of the pilots that was in training on the same ship was George W. Bush, our president. So it's like, you know, it's really unique how these things are, how much of this history stuff is coming together with this, so. Let's see, I talked about the Long Prairie connection, but, oh, one other thing Susan told me was that young George went to Connecticut to visit Charles, and at that time Anne was pregnant with Reed.
Okay.
So, you know, that was another thing, and some other things I found out too is, we were talking about a lot of the Christie Lindbergh things that they have, and the Christie boys and Charles Lindbergh were very close. So Charles had a lot of memorabilia that the Christies had, that they gave him, and she was saying that in Alaska, there's a gun that not Charles West, but Charles' son was given upon graduation, and it has engraved on it to CWC from CAL. So it was Charles West Christie from Charles Augusta Lindbergh who defined it. So it's like, and I'm thinking, and I was telling her, I said, I bet they'd love that at the Christie, or at the Lindbergh Museum. It's like, so anyway, hopefully she can come next year, because I've invited her to come back next year, and it'd be fun to have a kind of a get together with the Christie Lindbergh thing, and pursue it even more with the things that are going on. So, but it's nice to be here. You know, when I came to visit, I said I was here when I was a little kid, I think years and years ago, and I visited the house next door, and it's Charles Lindbergh. You know, when I was growing up, he was like the guy. And I was born in '48, so, but he was still a very famous person, and to think, you know, the two families are so interconnected and things going on. It's really fun.
Yeah, we were really glad you were able to show up for today, because it's super fascinating, like you said, just all of the overlap and the connections.
Yeah, so, and I gotta plug our paranormal tour again.
Yeah.
So, if anybody's interested, we still have openings, and you can go to the Christie House Museum, Google that, or go to christiehouse.org. And if you go to events, it'll come up, the paranormal tour is next Saturday night at 7 o'clock. And it's one of our biggest fundraisers. It's a little expensive, it's $100, but, you know, I mean, we've been doing them for several years, and we've never had anybody say they didn't get their $100 for it. And sometimes you have things happen, sometimes they don't happen. But it's the luck of the draw, but it's always fun to get together, and it's helping a very good cause, because basically it pays our heat bills. So we can keep, because we did put heat in the house. It did have radiator heat, and it cracked one year because it didn't get drained right. But then we didn't have heat, and when you don't heat these old houses, the plaster starts cracking and everything. So we did put heat in the house a few years back, and now we keep it at like 50 degrees, so that it's holding up much better. And you know, it's such a beautiful house, and it's such a valuable resource, not only for the community, but for the, you know, for the state as a whole, or the nation, that it'd be a shame for it to go by the wayside. And if you come to Long Prairie to see the Christie House, I got to plug the memorial wall too. So, but we have the first dedication, or we have the only dedication and the first dedication to the original flag raising at Iwo Jima in Long Prairie, and it was completely redone last year through private funds. And here's another unique thing about it, is that one of the original flag raisers on Iwo Jima, because there were two, there's the one that's a Marine Corps one, but there was one before, and when the general saw the flag, he said, that's too small of a flag, take this one up here and put a bigger one up. And that's the one that's a world famous picture. But the first one of the people that put it up, name was Charles Lindbergh.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I read that somewhere.
And Charles Lindbergh was from Little Falls.
Right.
But he wasn't even related to Charles Lindbergh, the flyer.
Right.
So, you know, it's kind of unique that here's another tie between, but Roger Johnson, who was a banker in Long Prairie, kind of got this memorial going, and it's a beautiful memorial, and if you come to see the Christie House, you really owe it to yourself to see them. You can see it when you're there. You can't miss it, but it's a fabulous memorial, and it's got all the Todd County people that served in them, but so far, we're missing quite a few of them, but, and there's also a dedication to women in the military there, so it's tie it in, you can go to a couple of places and see it.
Make a day of it.
And
Long
make a
Prairie
day of
place.
it, yeah, it's a nice community, so.
All right, and then before we wrap up, I will just plug the events that the Lindbergh House has coming up. We've got some great things coming up. On October 19th and October 26th, we have Lindbergh After Dark. That'll be a tour of the house led by flashlights, so that should be fun and exciting. And then, of course, we have our World War I Christmas program and a Snapshot Saturday in November for the Christmas program on November 9th. And of course, we have a holiday flights November 19th through December 8th. So check out our website for that, and I want to thank you all again, and I want to thank Pete again for coming and talking with us.
Thanks for having me.